Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar of the month. Today, we will be talking about how to wow your client experience, and we are joined by Kimberly. How are you today, Kimberly?
Hey, I'm doing great, Jason. Thank you. It's wonderful to be here.
We've had you on our podcast. We've had you on Clubhouse, and every time we always have people talk about the whispered wow. and so that's one of our audience's favorite term. We're happy to have you here to talk just a little bit about that and just how to, as we said, wow your client experience. So I'll let you start. Just explain a little bit about who you are for any of our audience that does not know who you are.
Okay, I wasn't really going to talk about myself, but I will for just a second, and then throughout I'll kind of tell you a few stories. If I lived in a really perfect world, all I would do is teach how to create better customer and client experiences. But most people don't want to start there, or they shouldn't start there. My background is marketing, branding, advertising, public relations, all under the communication umbrella. I've worked in the interior design industry or with the interior design industry. I'm not a designer myself for about 10 years. And before that, a lot of my time was spent in the hospitality, the luxury hospitality industry. I also spent some time in fine arts and fundraising and event production. So I think that's enough about me. You tell me when you're ready for me to get started.
Oh, you're ready. So you can go right on ahead and share your screen and we can get done.
Okay. And I'll go ahead and say, if someone is watching this, obviously not at the moment, but if someone's watching this, the recording, just know that in a couple of minutes, I'll give you my information. So if you do have questions, even if you're not here live, please just reach out and let me know. Okay. So quickly, just to let you know what we're going to talk about today. Why a wow? Why does it even matter? What are the different types of wows? Because yes, believe it or not, there are different types of wows. Probably you never learned that in school. We're going to talk a little bit about how focusing on your client experience can really affect your marketing and strengthen your marketing. Mm-hmm. Then I want to give you some tactical steps to creating wows, things that you can do. You're a little tired of the family next week over Thanksgiving, you could disappear into your office and say, oh, I've got to go work on my wows. And then Q&A, which, as I said, we can do that as we go through it. So why a wow? And I think an even bigger question with the people watching this, you guys already create wows, don't you? Because just the service or product that you deliver alone is a wow. Not every industry can say that, but when you design and create a kitchen, or you design a room, or if you're an architect, when you create the drawings, those are wows. So you're already doing it. The thing is, those are big wows. You still need to do them. It's what people are paying you for. But that's what people expect. That's already kind of part of the game. It's part of the deal. So we're going to talk a little bit about, when I talk about the other kind of wows, why some of these others that are smaller can even be more impactful. Mm-hmm. And if you really think about it, when it comes to all of this is really about the client experience. And why not? If we can do it, let's create a better client experience, because the world is messy and it is tiring and it's exhausting. And I know this happens to me all the time. Anytime we have a great experience, we remember it and we talk about it. So why not? If you can do it, because I'm also going to show you how it's going to strengthen your marketing. So I just think it's one of the smartest things we can do for our businesses is to create these great customer experiences, whether they're the small wows or the bigger wows. Oh, I just thought of something. I thought of an example. So, when you go get your hair done, sorry, Jason, I don't know if you're going to really relate to this as much as
I don't know anything about this, but you can talk about it.
Yeah, okay. So, but when I go in, okay, I'm going to get it cut. I'm going to get it colored. I live in Beaufort, South Carolina right now, where it's in between Charleston and Savannah. And in the summer, there's so much humidity. I also get it straightened. Okay. When it's over, I'm excited. I'm like, wow, I look so much better. But that's that. It's over. There's not any big emotion. I paid for what I received. Someone pays for your design. That's what you deliver. When you have a makeover and you don't know what they're going to do, and they turn you around and you look in the mirror and it's unexpected because you didn't know what to expect. That's when you have this really amazing emotional connection. And that's what we're going after. Because let me tell you what happens when you make an emotional connection. If I can get my computer to move. I think it went to sleep while I was talking. Oh, that's my info. Sorry, you guys, I interrupted my thing when you make an emotional connection. But this is how you can reach me. I'll come back to this at the end. That's my email and my website. And Instagram is a great place to reach out to me. It becomes memorable and mentionable. That's what we're going after with the client experience. You want people to remember you, because when they remember you, they tell your stories. When they remember you, they look for you the next time they want to hire someone who does what you do. When they remember you, they talk about you. You're mentionable, memorable, and mentionable. And that creates trust. And especially post-COVID or during COVID, after COVID, trust, it's always been important. I have preached trust since I started working in the customer experience world in 1999. But when people talk about you and you make that emotional connection, the trust factor increases. And that is so important. So let's talk a little bit about the different types of wows. And I'm just going to stop sharing for a second. So I mentioned that I spent a lot of time in the hotel industry. So I'm going to use some of those examples because I think that because not everyone is in the exact same industry who's watching this webinar. And I think most people can relate to a hotel experience. So when you walk into the hotel and the valet remembers your name and you haven't been there for 2 years and the lobby is gorgeous and there's the big grand staircase and someone shows up to take your luggage and they put it in the right place and all of that, that's a wow. You're like, wow, look at this. Gorgeous. But it's expected. Mm-hmm. If you're staying in a Four Seasons, you better have a gorgeous lobby. It's a big deal, but it's expected. But let's say, because it's a true story, you're the CEO of a company who's having a big meeting at the hotel. You live in New York, but you're originally from North Carolina, and the meeting is in Phoenix. So you show up, you're a big deal. Because your company's spending a lot of money on the sales meeting. So you see the lobby, everybody remembers your name, you get to your room, because you're a big deal, the general manager has left a bottle of wine, a handwritten note, and a gorgeous bouquet of flowers. Okay, you're the CEO, you're kind of used to it. It's good. And if they didn't do it, you might be disappointed. You expect it. But once we had this exact situation and we did a little research, it was all over this guy's bio that he was from North Carolina. We found pictures of him drinking beer, craft beers. He didn't have a Budweiser in his hand, not even a Stella Artois. He had craft beers. So we got some beer that was brewed in Asheville, North Carolina, because that's where he's from. And instead of a floral arrangement, we brought in blooming dogwood branches because the dogwood flower is the state flower of North Carolina, and then wrote the personal note. That was not an expectation. It was a wow. It's a whispered wow. It's the thing when you get the note card in the bag, when you bought a dress and someone wrote you a personal note. I hope this black tie is all that you've hoped for and that you raise the money that you need to for the children. If the staff member at that store wrote that, included it with your dress, when you pulled it out and read it, you'd go, wow. And that's what I want to talk about today. How to create those whispered wows. I've spent many years producing show houses, designer show houses. And I think probably quite a few of you are in the kitchen and bath world. And when you walk into a kitchen that has been designed for a show house, I mean, you got all the bells and whistles. And yes, it might be the quartz, and I'm sorry if I used the wrong terminology, y'all, this isn't my thing, but the quartz is from a quarry in Italy, and there's all these stories about it, and you've got this hood that's made from copper or something, and it's amazing. And sure, you go, wow, that is amazing. But I've watched the guests at these show houses, and you know where people get really excited? When they open the cabinet and it closes quietly. When they open and they see all the little spots where you can fit the dinner plates and you can fit the soup bowls. Those smaller moments is where people go, oh, they feel something. The big grand, important, but that's not where the emotion happens. It's these smaller moments where the emotion happens. In another show house, it was a home for the holidays. And Barbara Heath was the designer, and she had the guest room. And so they had to decorate it for the holidays. And if any of you have been involved in show houses or even attended one, you often see, because it's a best practice, if you're in a show house and you don't do this, do this. You have people donate maybe rugs or linens, or you brought in wallpaper installers. And sometimes they're letting you borrow these things. You want to say thank you. So often someone will type up real pretty font and put in a frame somewhere in the room, thank you to, the folks who helped with this room. Well, in Barbara's room, so she had this gorgeous ottoman and it had a beautiful tray on it, beautiful piece of paper, beautiful pen. And it was a letter, and it said, "Dear Santa, thank you for all of the people who helped make this space possible." And then all the companies and the people were written. Now that caused an emotional connection. It was creative. It was special. It was on point. It was on brand. The number of times this moment was photographed, unbelievable. It even made it into the magazine, that moment. And it was the whispered wow. People weren't, it wasn't the whole room. It was this tiny, tiny little moment in this room. So that's the whispered wow, the quiet wows. Let me go back to sharing my screen again. I think I have something on my computer that causes it to fall asleep before I want it to. So those whispered wows, those are the interesting things to talk about. People remember them, so they're memorable and they are mentionable. So, one thing I really like about this industry, looking at the broader industry, is that you already know how to do this. You're doing it. You're doing it every single day with what you create, with the spaces that you create, with the designs that you create. So all we're doing was we're taking what you've already got. You've already got the skill, and we're moving it over into the business side and the client experience side and the marketing side. And when you do this is going to seem a little too much, but I promise this is what happens. You know what to say. So your copy, your blog copy, your website copy, your social media captions, that will improve because when you focus on the client experience, you know what your clients value, or you learn what your clients value. And that helps you also make more intentional choices. Where are you going to advertise? Where are your marketing dollars going? What are you going to sponsor? And you're not just making those decisions because someone told you should, someone like me, or maybe Jason, you hire to help you with your marketing. We say you should do this. It's more intentional. You know what you should do. You start differentiating yourself because of these experiences that you're creating, and opportunities are not only going to appear to you, but they're going to find you. You'll actually save marketing dollars because you're going to be smarter. You're going to know what works. You can better communicate your own value. You're more confident in your business. It really is true. And I decided to say this one last. Your team finds it easier to stay on brand. Y'all, that is one of the things that makes me crazy. I'll meet a designer or the owner of the company, whatever it may be, and they are great and I love them. But then I talk to one of their staff members or their team members. I'm like, does this person even work for the same company? If you can get them to understand the brand, which we're going to talk more about in a second, and to understand the importance of customer and client experience, and they can help live your brand, y'all, if I could give everyone a goal for 2022 is to get your team on board to understand and live your brand. But that is a totally different webinar. So I will, I'm sorry. You what?
We actually had a breakfast today for the National Kitchen and Bath Association for the new members. And we were at, I'm not going to say where we were at because I'm going to call them out, but we were at this place, and then the president said, well, we had actually, did some ordering online and we haven't heard anything. And so, the manager there, he had took care of everything. And so she was like, this is an amazing experience. Why aren't all your people like that? So what you were just saying about not being on brand just happened. So
yeah, exactly.
We'll do a different today.
Yeah, that's so interesting that you just had that today. So we'll do a different webinar on how to get your team to live your brand. I mean, that's my tagline for my company, bring your brand to life. I've got about 100 stories on that. But anyway, so how are you going to do this? I mean, without going out and, reading all these books on customer experience and hiring people, how can you do it yourself? Well, I have a couple of things, and I'm going to tell you this, it's a lot, but I'm hoping that every person who watches this, if you just take away one thing to do and then come back and watch this again and do something else and do something else. I promise you, if it doesn't make a difference, I want you to call me or email me or whatever and call me out, because I promise it will make a difference. The 3 things you really, really need to do, and they're not that hard and they don't cost. Remember that, okay? Understand your customers, understand your brand, and understand the importance of touch points. So we're going to talk about first understanding your customers. If we can get into that whole, who's your ideal customer and all of that, that's not what I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about understanding how they think, what they value, how they make decisions. So we're going to talk a little bit about understanding your customers. And I think we're saying, these huge companies spend so much money on focus groups and whatnot, but there are other things that you can do that are really kind of fun, and you can get your team involved. I actually have a whole little workbook on this. So if you're interested in downloading it or just having me send it to you, just send me either an email or something on Instagram. It's just my name, and I'm happy to send that over to you. And it just takes what I'm telling you here and gets much deeper. It tells you stories and how to do it and whatnot. So the first thing I say is watch your customers. And that may sound a little silly, but it's just so basic. I mean, if you by chance have a retail space or a space where people come and meet with you and you have a receptionist, ask your receptionist to watch the person who comes in the door. Is there any confusion when they're walking in the door? What do they do while they're waiting for you? Do they drink the tea or do they drink the coffee? Do they read the magazines or do they look at the art? If they're in a showroom, where do they always go first? The other big thing is to listen to them. When I did show houses, I was kind of the person behind the scenes, so no one knew who I was. I wasn't a docent. I didn't have a name badge. And I would walk through the show house and just incognito and just listen. What did people like? What did people not like? Have your employees in the showroom or in your office and just listen to what people are saying, because you'll find things that people love and that people don't like. Sorry, Jason, were you getting ready to say something?
Oh, no, I'm just clearing my throat. No, you're
okay, sorry. Read your reviews. And I know this is kind of funny because if you don't have Google reviews, you need some. So proactively go and ask for reviews. But it's so funny because people pay so much attention to the bad reviews. Hopefully you don't have any, but I had a friend who owned a spa and she was always focused, if she ever had a bad review, to go in and fix it and respond like you're supposed to do. The funny thing was when she started really focusing on her 4- and 5-star reviews, she found a commonality. And that was people didn't like the magazine she had in her spa. But they didn't think that was a big enough deal to actually lower the review. She thought, okay, these are kind of affluent people. This is a high-end spa. So she had the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and, Forbes and just very kind of, that kind of level magazines. She discovered what they really wanted was an escape. That was the only time they would ever read of her clientele. They would ever read a Vogue or read Elle. So that's what they wanted. They didn't want to read about the world. They wanted to escape. So she got into her customers' heads by really analyzing those reviews. And I know number 4, engage on social media. You think, well, Kimberly, of course I do that. Well, so many people don't. Pose a question on your Instagram. Talk, get up on stage when you're on Clubhouse. One of my favorite things to do on social media is, and I'm kind of going opposite of what I just said, but is to go in there and go into groups and rooms where your clients are and listen. There are rooms where regular people who aren't designers, they go in just to ask questions. And sometimes there are no interior designers in the room. It's just, they're just talking about, okay, how do I fix this? I'm in like 3 Facebook groups as I just moved, and I'm trying to do this myself, where I'm like learning how, like, design ideas. Go into those groups. And maybe it's not always to give advice, because it's supposed to be people who aren't designers, but listen to them and see where the problems are. Where are the kitchen problems? What questions come up over and over and over? Do things like, for next week, for Thanksgiving, what about say, okay, question. Everyone knows I design cabinets. So what's your number 1 complaint every Thanksgiving, Christmas, holiday, whenever you have a big group over? What's the biggest problem you always face with your kitchen? Ask those questions, especially when they make sense timing wise. Have a conversation. I know, old school. Ask a former client if you can take them out to breakfast or cocktails and just talk to them about their experience, and ask them to be really honest. What was fantastic? What would you have loved if it had been a little bit different? How and why? That is invaluable information. And I always include walk in their shoes last, because I think it's so important. Be your customer. Go to your website. Click on the links. Fill out your consult form. Fill out the form that enables them to book a call with you, and see all of the things that come out. I'll tell you one thing, if there's one thing that I recommend you do, this wouldn't be to do in 5 minutes, but this weekend, if you have any automated emails that go out to your clients, check them, whether it's an email newsletter, a nurture sequence, whatever it is, check them and make sure they're timely. I remember preaching this during 2021 because of COVID. The world was changing so fast. And what we were saying in our nurture sequences, in our emails, when they sign up for your newsletter and you say, oh, the next day they get one, and then 2 days later they get another email kind of talking about you and your business. You've got to be timely. Otherwise you come across as not very smart and inauthentic, and that trust factor goes down. So look at your automated email sequences and make sure that they are timely. We're going into the holidays. Talk about the holidays. Okay. Anyway, sorry, I keep getting off on tangents. Walking in their shoes could also be, if you have a bricks and mortar, whether it's your office, your studio, your retail spot, your showroom, Google the address and see how it takes you there. Try parking. Does the parking make sense? Walk in the door. Does that door always stick? What happens when you are using your credit card at the machine? Walk in their shoes. We're going to talk about touch points in a few minutes. Be your customer. All the stuff you've already done, kind of get in their brains and become them and see what's working and what's not.
Real quick, can I ask you, what type of shoes are those? I love those shoes.
I know those are cute. Those are not mine. I think that is probably a very hip influencer's pink tennis shoes. But I'll tell you, Jason, for you, I'm going to go, you know how you can take an image and you can put the image up and Google will find all the other images that are close to it.
Right.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to see if I can find it for you.
Yeah, those are some nice shoes, actually.
Okay. If so, we'll put it in the notes or something. Okay. So there are also 3 questions when you're creating the experience. This is sort of going a little advanced level, but I'm going to say it real quickly because I say this in every single talk I do. If you'll ask yourself 3 questions about the client experience, it can really shift your brain. That whole perspective shift is where creativity happens. How do you want your client to feel when they're on your website, during the install or after the install, during your presentation, when they work with you in general? How do you want them to feel? What do you want them to do? Book a call, tell their friends, because let me tell you, they're not going to do it unless you prompt them to do it. And my favorite one is, what do you want them to say? So let's talk about a couple of these for just a second. How do you want them to feel? It could be a lot of different things. Because if they feel something that helps them have an emotion, people buy based on emotion. It creates an emotional connection. And so that connection is how they're connected to your business. So these are just different ways. I mean, they shouldn't just feel satisfied. Okay, that is boring. Maybe they feel really smart because they found you. Maybe they feel confident. Maybe they feel like, okay, I'm being so stereotypical right now, but since I'm a female, I think I can do it. I mean, maybe they're like, okay, my husband's not going to freak out that I'm spending this much on a kitchen because these people are so good. And I just feel so confident. I trust them so much. So how do you want them to feel? What do you want them to do? And what do you want them to say? Quick story, which I apologize if, Jason, I know you've heard this many times, but when I was producing show houses for Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles magazine, one of the things we did was we went into a room with a big whiteboard and we said, okay, when the group of women who came to our, let's say it was the Home for the Holidays show house, when they all go out to their holiday luncheon afterwards, what do we want them to say? And we just brainstormed and we came up with things like, oh my gosh, I could live there. Oh, I so wish that I'd waited and brought my mom or my next door neighbor. I want to come back. I got so many ideas that, I can't even redo my house right now, but there was so much creativity happening in that house. I'm going to apply this I'm going to start this new business. I'm going to apply it there. Oh, I just felt inspired by everything I saw. On and on and on and on and on. And it changed our operations. That's the thing. When you focus on the customer experience, it will affect the way your business operates almost always for the good. So it used to be we would let people come in the side door if it was raining. No. We wanted an amazing experience and we wanted people to go, ah. So we made sure, even if it was raining, we had umbrellas and people would walk them to the front door, but they could go through the front door. And we would walk them there with those huge golf umbrellas. We ordered umbrellas with our logo on it just for that. We allowed people for the first time to take pictures. A magazine was sponsoring this show house. We didn't like people to take pictures, but we wanted them to remember and apply the things they learned in their own homes. We made sure the docents understood that their job was not just to direct people the right way and make sure people didn't take the silver, but they actually made people feel welcomed, inviting them into their home. How do you want them to feel? What do you want them to do? What do you want them to say? And I really do think what do you want them to say is probably, it's the one where people have the most fun. And I think you need to do them all, but that's the place I would probably start, because it really is you do that and then you reverse engineer. You reverse engineer the experience. Okay, so we talked about understanding your customers, walking in their shoes, becoming your customer. Again, let me know if you want that little workbook. Understanding your brand. Okay, guys, on each of these, I can do an entire day or weekend workshop. So I'm just going to just touch on it for a second. I said earlier that I wish I could just do or create customer experiences. What I found with my clients was, because that's what I do. I mean, they hire me to help them create better customer experiences. But what I always find is the brand wasn't defined enough. They might have a pretty website. It might have a good logo, maybe a tagline, fonts and colors, but the brand personality, the essence of the brand wasn't there. And to create an experience that is not on brand, it's a waste of your time and money. It really is. So the brand part has to be strong first. So I'm going to give you this and screenshot it if you want to. I don't know if you guys, oops, let me do that. I don't know if my, oops, Lord, it's going the wrong way. I don't know if my picture shows up here in the corner. I don't want it to. Maybe it's just on mine. But we talk about what your service is. Your service isn't the end result. Your service is the problem that you're solving and the promise that you're making and how your client's life looks different after it's over. This is where that ideal client, I try not to use that term. I like to call my favorite clients, and you figure out who they are. Sure, we've got some demographics, age, where they live, all that kind of stuff. But what frustrates her when she tries to do this herself? And why doesn't she? What does she really want? Where is she already going for help? Is she going to HGTV? Is she Googling it? What is she doing? What's her life look like? Once you define your brand values and your purpose and why you're doing what you're doing, first of all, we need to know that on those days where we're done. You're like, I can't do this anymore. I'm exhausted. You need to know why you're doing it so you can go back to it and so that you can tell your story. When you tell your story, the right people, those clients over here that you really want to work with, they hear you. Not everyone will hear you. Some people don't care about your story. The people you really want to work with, once you define that, they hear your story and they think, oh, I want him to design my bathroom because whatever your values and your purpose and your stories are. When you create your brand personality and your brand voice, it's so much easier to write. I know I have so many people say, Kimberly, can I just hire you to write stuff for me? I'm like, no. Because once you have all this figured out, you can do it. Well, actually, sometimes I say yes, and I will do it. But I mean, you've got to know your brand personality and voice. And I always say this one for last because I think it's so important. Your differentiator. We were all, well, most of us were brought up to fit in and to be what we were supposed to be, whatever that meant. The really fortunate ones who are listening to this right now or out in the world are the people who kind of embraced what made them different. And that was part of how they positioned themselves. And that was part of their brand, part of their values and purpose. How do you solve the problem differently? How's your packaging different? How do they have different benefits with you than hiring one of your, some people don't like it, but the word competitors? When you focus on the client experience and you create the whispered wows, those little tiny things that people can remember and talk about, you are differentiating yourself right there. So brand clarity is so important. I think, Jason, I did this for you guys on your podcast. I can't remember, but I have it's the only reason I sell this little workbook for brand clarity is because there's so much that when I do it as a freebie, people just kind of get overwhelmed and they put it aside. I think it's like $20, but I'm happy to, if anyone emails me and says, or sends me a DM and says that they were on this, or they heard from you on this webinar, I'm happy just to send you that booklet. It's a great thing to do with your team. So just let me know.
We appreciate that. That's all.
No, absolutely. Okay. Understand your customers, understand your brand, understand the importance of your touch points. A touch point is every interaction a customer or client has with your business, every single one. So yes, of course, it is your fonts and your logo and your Instagram feed and your Pinterest boards and what you put on your website and the way you decorate a showroom like Lauren Deloche did here on the right. And if you have a retail space, what it looks like and how you merchandise and how you're texting someone, what you're saying in your text. And look at this woman, the way you're dressed. Okay, I don't know her. I don't know her brand, but it is elegant. It is confident. It is sophisticated. I can just tell you that right now, just looking at what she's wearing. It is what I was not planning on saying that, but it is what you wear. It's the flowers you sent. It's the flowers to your clients, the flowers you have in your office. It's the quotes that you use. It's the merchandise that you sell. Of course, it's the way you design. It's the thank you notes that you write, the stationery that you use, the ink that you use, the newsletters that you send out, what you serve during an open house or during a party, the type of wine that you serve, the type of food, the type of glass. I remember being with Susan Ferrier and Bobby McAlpine one day, and they were so intentional on what they served. I don't remember the whys, but they only served LaCroix and Dr. Pepper. Now, that I know McAlpine has made a lot of changes in the past few years, but there was a story behind it. I don't remember it now. It was so funny. They served it in a beautiful crystal glass, but you got to choose your flavor of LaCroix, and they had an ice bucket. It was just part of the experience. It was beautiful. We got to choose which one, and we knew it wasn't like, the cheap generic, sparkling water. It was good sparkling water. The music that plays, not only in your showroom or in your studio, in your office, your whole music that plays. Every single interaction a customer or client has with your business. These touch points are so important. The touch points tell your story. They start to weave, the touch points, it's like a thread that goes through your clients' minds, and they start to understand you. And I'll tell you, when these touch points are not on brand, you start to lose trust. It's not like someone goes, oh, well, forget it. She didn't serve the right water during that meeting. I'm out of here. No. Just a little something that's kind of off. And you do enough little somethings that are off, and you erode that trust. Every touch point is a part of your marketing. It's an opportunity for you to either strengthen your brand or erode or weaken your brand. It's so important to pay attention to touch points. I'm going to quickly do this. I wasn't going to, but I decided to add it real quick. Brand consistency. This is another thing that you can do quickly. So all those touch points we were just talking about, and we just talked about the understanding your brand. Once you have identified the touch points and you understand your brand, this is what happens if you're not consistent. Your clients won't really know who you are. They see you one way on Instagram. They see you another way in person. Come on, that's happened to you. You see someone who's kind of quote unquote important, or an influencer, or someone big in the industry, and then you go to like we used to go to conferences, and she or he isn't like that in person. That starts to weaken your brand, and the trust factor falls. And we're so busy. I think we have something like 600,000 individual thoughts in our brains every day. I know I didn't make it up. I don't know the source, but it's ridiculous. We don't have the brain, whatever width, the brain width, whatever, that's not a good term, to remember everything. So the second that things seem a little off, the dots stop connecting. We're talking about that thread through all of your touch points helps to create a story in your customers' minds. The minute those don't connect anymore, they kind of start forgetting about you, and they're not going to tell your stories, and they move on to something else. So brand consistency is huge. I'm sure I probably have a something on that too. So let me know if you want it. I've written about 100 blog posts on it because I love talking brand consistency. It's fun. Okay. If you're going to do one thing today, just one, to improve your brand consistency, make sure your headshot is the same on all of your digital profiles, not just social media. So I'm not going to go all the way back to my very first picture, but I put my name and my company and my picture up there, and my Instagram handle is the same profile picture that I have on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn and everywhere else. Because if you don't, maybe someone sees you in a Facebook group, and they're like, oh, okay, so this isn't like true business, but I want to find her on Instagram. If it's not the same picture, they're going to have a hard time finding you. And they do. I mean, there's a girl on Clubhouse. I don't know how many of you do Clubhouse, and I can't remember her name, but I'm like, oh, there she is. I even she designs spaces. Oh, I just remember her name. Oh, she designs spaces that are 1,000 square feet and under. And I remember that because I remember her picture. So just make sure all of your, whether you use your logo or you use your headshot, make sure it's the same. Make sure it's the same on your ASID profile. Make sure it's the same on your Zoom picture. When you turn off your video, there's a picture that I think you might have to do something in your settings. Just make sure it's the same. Okay, that's my little tip for the moment. So I'm going to stop. Again, here's my info. Stop sharing my screen for just a second. There we go. We were talking about brand clarity a second ago, and I'm going to tell you one story that I think, again, it kind of helps shift perspective. And it also talks about experiences. Back into the hotel industry for a second. But I used to work for a company where it was a huge hotel company, and we had new employees come in every 2 weeks. And the executive team would go into the orientation they were having and kind of give a 1-minute speech on what we do, the executive chef, whatever, head of PR, head of marketing. And one day our general manager said, I know that your job is to cut all the vegetables. And I know that your job is to sell the rooms, and your job is to clean the rooms, and your job is to make sure, the security guy was there, is to make sure we stay safe. Let me tell you something. You have no idea why someone is staying in this hotel. It could be a couple that might be on the brink of divorce. and they decide to give it one more shot, a romantic weekend. It might be a guy who's decided he's going to finally start that book he's told himself and his family and his friends for years he's going to write. It might be a woman who's coming in for the job interview of a lifetime. It might be a husband and wife and their 3 kids, and the husband and wife have saved for 3 years to afford this vacation with their family. Your job might be to cut the vegetables and clean the rooms and keep us safe. But your real job is to protect the dreams of our guest. You don't know why they're here. Your job is to take care of them. Your job is to show generosity, graciousness, and empathy. And when it comes to creating client experiences, I know your job is to create kitchens or to create beautiful spaces. But when you do that through a place of generosity and empathy, understanding your customers, understanding your own brand, and graciousness, you will set your company on fire in the best way possible. Because you know what? You're going to have a whole new marketing team. Your customers and your clients will become the strongest part of your marketing. And we all want word of mouth. So when you're looking at your brand clarity, think about what you're really doing. You're providing this, but where's the value to your client? What does it really matter to her? Our guests at that hotel, sure, they wanted a beautiful room and a nice view and several restaurants. But what did they really need and really want? So when you look at, and I think I had a slide that sort of reminded you all of this, but you remember it, understanding your customers, understanding your brand, recognizing the value of your touch points, and going in and doing your big wows, because that's what you do so well. But finding those tiny moments, the whispered wows, where people connect, there's emotion, there's feeling, and they remember you. That's how you create wow customer experiences. So I just hope you guys will be in touch. I'd love to hear your questions. If you disagree with something, it doesn't matter. I love it. I love the conversation. I can talk about this stuff all the time. So Jason, thank you for letting me be here. It's really fun.
Love it. We have a couple questions. One is, what would be your suggestion on once you land a client? What is that initial touch point on how to wow them?
Okay, you're going to talk about the welcome packet?
Yes, I am.
It's funny. I was just talking to a client yesterday, and they're like, "Oh, this kind of seems like a lot of work," because I want them to customize the welcome packet, and they're like, "Oh," I'm like, "You have no idea. Think about what it's going to mean to your client." I think a welcome packet is so smart. And here's the reason. Not only, it has to be beautiful, it has to reflect your brand, but when someone signs the contract or when they pay the down payment or the retainer, whatever they're paying you, the deposit, that's emotional. You're like, "Oh, I just made a huge commitment."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't want to, it's like anticlimactic to do that. And then you just go off and you have to go unload the dishwasher or something. No, you don't want to wait until your first meeting. Send them something immediately. You could send a welcome packet. That's my favorite. But heck, you could even send an email that has like fireworks with woohoo, or a text, with all the confetti going. Now that would not be on brand for me because I'm a little more formal than that. But I can think of an interior design company, and they were very well respected and they do amazing work. And if they sent a text with confetti, it would be completely on brand. So I just think when people's emotions are high, because you've already got an emotional connection right there when someone's signing or paying, go right then, because you don't want it to drop. You just want to keep it up there. You want to keep that dynamic high.
One thing that you had talked about when you were on our podcast was, a welcome video. And I actually signed up a client right after that. I used the welcome video and they reached out to me and said, "That's amazing. He's like, you just reiterated why I actually went with you." So, I mean, just something small. And it took us about a minute to do the video. We just shot the video saying, it's amazing to have you on board. We look forward to, to crushing it for you and yada, yada, yada. And then just sent that off like right after he hit pay. sent that email off, and then it had the welcome video. And
That is great.
was his
Did you do it? Did you just do it on your phone?
Yes, I had just did it on my phone.
And did you send it via text or email?
I had sent it in an email.
That's great. Congrats. Oh, I love that.
Well,
that's really good. Yes, I do. I know I said that. I hesitate myself because I never want to be on video, and here we are right here. But I never really want to be on video. So to those of you who are listening who don't want to be on video, listen to Jason, because I mean, the guy said it reiterated why they hired you.
Yep.
You guys, anytime you have a luxury purchase, I think we all can experience this. Sometimes you go, what did I do? Was this the right decision? Was this smart? What if there's something better? Da, 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 da. You just like kind of just like killed the guy's doubts by doing that. That's great.
Yep. Love that. And I appreciate you for that idea, because it worked.
Yay.
So there was somebody else that commented on the shoes. So you might want to have that. So once you find out where the shoes came from, let me know, and I'll have that within the show notes of this.
Okay.
I actually had 2 people say those are some nice shoes. So.
Okay. That's so funny. You know what I'm gonna do? I've been kind of, one thing I've learned, especially over the last year and a half, is I just don't mind at all mentioning weaknesses. And I've just been a loser lately on my social media, and I'm working on content calendar all up this afternoon after we finish this. So I think that's going to be my next post on Instagram. It's going to be a picture of those shoes, and I'm going to source it and say where it came from.
That's a good idea. Love that. Yeah. Another question we had: meet with the client once a month, but in between there, they really don't have no good ideas on how to really wow them in between there, working on design, then working on what they're doing for the client. What would be a good touch point, like in between those monthly meetings?
I have she's a friend. She's an interior designer, but she's a friend. And one thing that she said is so successful, and I've started doing this myself, is she just sends a Friday update every single Friday, just so that they aren't out there wondering. And she and I were having a glass of wine one night, and she said, I don't really have anything to say. It's not that I haven't done any work, but it's not glamour. It doesn't sound that great.
Right.
What if you say, I'm doing all the boring behind the scenes stuff right now that's really important, but I still wanted to send you an update. And instead I'm sending you my favorite podcast, my favorite book, and my favorite movie. Just something to say, oh, I found this week. I'm happy to tell you what I'm doing, but trust me, it's all the boring stuff, and it's language that no one should want to understand. But I didn't want to not be in touch. So here's this. Another thing I think is great to do, especially after, after you're done with the project, is I try to keep a notebook for every single client. And so maybe I'm in a meeting with them or on a Zoom call with them, and I make random notes. If they say, oh, my child is interested in this particular school, or my granddaughter is learning to play the guitar, whatever. So I try to take those kind of personal notes. And then if I find an article online, or especially if I can cut it out of the paper, out of a magazine, or just rip it out, and I can actually physically send that to them saying, oh my gosh, I'd never heard of this college, this small school that their son wants to go to, until you mentioned it. And now it's showing up everywhere. I just found this article that he might want to read. I mean, that sort of thing is something I think it has to become a habit, because you're like, really, something else I have to do? I know we're all too busy, but if it becomes a habit, another thing, as I mentioned that I just moved in. That's why it's actually everything from here that you can see looks good, and everything else is a total disaster area. But I'm now creating a box per client. I'm looking for really beautiful white boxes, if anyone has a good source for that. Anyway, and so when I just take little notes, and I just scribble a piece of paper and I throw it in the box, because it's faster for me. And then when I go to that client, and I just go through the box and I see all those notes that I remembered. And so it's just, back to that empathy, trying to understand what they're feeling. If you can figure out what might be making them nervous right now, or what might they be questioning right now, and address that, that can be really, really effective too.
Okay. One other question we have: how long after you've had a client should you actually follow up with them? Because they said they send monthly newsletters, and then they'll send annual birthday note. So how long after should they stay in touch?
You mean when should it end?
Yeah, when should it end? All right.
When you don't like
should it end? Yeah, I mean, should it?
I don't really think it should end.
Okay.
Because especially in this work, in this industry, there's a good chance they might want to hire you again or recommend you. So, I mean, if you really don't like them and it's not worth the $2 birthday card, then don't do it, because you know, get that juju out of your life.
Right.
Why not? One thing is, I'm sure there are some exceptions of people who are listening to this, but most of us don't need 100 clients every month, 100 new clients. We need a few.
Right.
And so to keep those relationships going, once you have them, I mean, you do not want to lose them. So keep them on your email list. Stay in touch. I mean, I still reach out to clients sometimes 3 or 4 years ago and just say, hey, I saw something today that reminded me of you. Because that way it doesn't feel so salesy. And I just wanted to check in and see how you were doing. It's okay to just be a human and not be a business person. Be a human business person and just say, hey, thought of you today because of X. So I wanted to say hello. But no, I think you keep going unless they ask you to stop, or like I said, for some reason you don't like them.
Okay. And I think we have one more. What is something that you have experienced that made you go wild?
Oh man. Okay. Let me think for 1 second. Gosh, it kind of happens a lot, and I need a box to write all these things down, because actually I usually put them on my phone, but my phone's not anywhere in the vicinity, so I can't find it. This is going to be too big. I know you want a more exciting, sexy wow, but honestly, when someone listens, especially when I don't expect it. Again, that's back to that when it's unexpected. I was in North Carolina with my parents, and I was at a restaurant, and I said, okay, well, my mom is this, and I just went through the story. So we need to sit in a certain area. And the girl said, oh, I completely understand. My mom's going through that too. And I mean, and then when my mother came in, she treated her like she was her own mother. She understood. Just that empathy. I think because when someone hears you and understands you, and this girl was probably 24 years old. Nothing against the 24-year-olds, but she was young. I was like, wow, this is a young woman who has an amazing ability to be empathetic. And that is something that can take you so far. And it's something that it can be a natural skill, but it's also learned. I'm getting off on the empathy tangent, but that sort of thing, just to be heard, will wow me. Gosh, I'm trying to think of something else. I don't know, but now you've inspired me for my next several social media posts is what were my personal wow client experiences. I will come up with them. I promise you guys, I'm not asking you to follow me on Instagram, but if you do, I'll be there. I promise.
I believe that's it, because I don't see anybody else typing anything else, but we appreciate your time, Kim. This has been amazing.
Well, thank you. And my apologies for my internet weirdness, but this has been fun. I can talk about this stuff all day, because I really do think it makes a difference in people's lives. I sometimes call it the contagious customer experience. When you have a great experience, because we're so used to not having great experiences, you kind of become you're like in a better mood. And it kind of pays itself forward a little bit. So I think it's a great thing to do for your clients, and it's also a great thing to do for your business. So thank you, Jason, for giving me the chance to talk about it.
We appreciate it. And next month, we'll be talking about developing your marketing plan for 2022. As everybody is beginning to do that now, we're going to have a session just on that. And this is going to be a prelude to what I'm going to have a talk at the KBIS event in February. Yeah, so that's what we're going to talk about next month. And we hope to see you all there, and you have a great day.
Bye, everyone.